All right, the time is 6:30. I hereby call the order of the regularly scheduled meeting of the Sunderland Selectboard. Our first order of business tonight is going to be to approve the minutes from three meetings, 2:18, 3:3, and 3:17.
A motion we approve the minutes from 2:18, 3:3, and 3:17.
Second?
We have a motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 3-0 on the minutes. Alrighty, moving on to new business. Our first order of new business is going to be with the Insurance Advisory Committee and their recommendation presentation to the Select Board.
Yeah, so we don't, I'm Ben, I'm the chair of the
This is Ben Peters from the fire department.
police
Please.
department. Yeah.
Oh,
So we had formed a few years ago as a committee to address sort of the rising cost of health insurance premiums. And a few years ago, we worked to sort of work with the town to increase contributions from the town. This year, with a really short time frame, we met to address an unprecedented increase from Maya of 20% to the town's health insurance. With the time that we had, it was a pretty easy choice to make adjustments to the premiums that the current plan has to mitigate some of those costs to the tune of about 9.5%. A survey was sent out to all of the employees for the town, and we received almost 30 responses to that, with an overwhelming amount of responses in support of adopting those changes. So it was about 75-25 in terms of the members' response to that, in terms of increasing the premiums. There will be a deductible with this recommendation, but again, it saves nearly 9.5% overall year over year. And we as a committee reached that decision unanimously and are hereby recommending that the town adopt those changes to the health insurance policy. And again, our overall goal with, meetings to come, years to come, is still to increase, contributions from the town, explore things like an HSA, health savings account, which was something that we solicited feedback from the survey that we put out, and there was definitely interest in the HSA. There was frustration with the time frame, and obviously, it's hard to have your benefits change, but this is what we came up with, and this is what we're recommending. So.
Okay, and do we have a complete, what those list of changes are?
yes. And there's, I'm sorry, it's in Heather's office, but there's a
Okay.
sheet for you to sign off. It lists exactly what the plan design changes are. It lists all of them. And it, the new deductible is $250 to $750, single and family. And that was the largest change. It was over 5% just to add that.
Which,
The other changes are for imaging and.
Yeah, this is a sheet that we have that's sort of one of the preliminary sheets that we were looking at. And you can note that there's changes to some high-cost imaging. There's
Yeah.
some changes to
so the
co-pays.
deductibles are, again, going from current of a 0 deductible, right?
Right.
So these are,
And then it's changes in co-pays. Like the emergency room was $75, it's going to $100. I
So,
think,
and those numbers on that paper, we had sort of worked with Maya
Yeah.
back and forth a bunch to get numbers that were a little bit easier to understand, and then the final product that we had sent out for the survey was much easier to understand than that paper
Yeah.
is right now. But essentially, there's a deductible that's roughly $250 for an individual, and then it goes up from there all the way to the family plan to $750. And once that deductible is met, again, that's per person. It's just the co-pays.
yeah. And in the grand scheme of health insurance, those are still decent deductibles. Those are still on the lower end of deductibles.
We've had a rich plan since the onset of
Yeah.
our plan, and this is the first time that we've made changes like this.
Yeah,
But I mean, here we are. I mean, 20% is
Right.
massive. So
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
within the time frame that we had. This was the
yeah, no, I mean,
direction.
I think those are I think you got a good deal on, even still on your deductibles and stuff with this, because I know a lot of insurance companies, those numbers are in the thousands.
Yeah.
For, you know, deductibles
And it's not out of the question entertaining other companies, but that's something that we'll do in the future, and it's
Yeah.
not gonna be, you know,
Right,
in
obviously.
a rushed timeframe format.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And we did learn in this situation, everyone's been impacted. The other insurance companies have also gone up 20%, so it's been, you know, we really didn't have anywhere to look. That was
back for yours.
that was going to be less. But the committee was amazing, the amount of work they did and their focus, and the school reps, Donna and Leela had the largest amount of work. And Donna, I think 3 or 4 different times held meetings and went to lunch hours to answer questions and really make sure people had a sense of what was happening.
Everybody on the committee definitely came together quickly to deal with this, you know, in the timeframe that we had, so I'm very thankful for that, so.
We are too.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
and my big takeaway here is just how much we appreciate the committee's work on this, especially, as you said, the short time frame. You know, it was obviously to the benefit of the membership to save money on their upfront costs, but it's also a benefit to the town budget-wise, and so we certainly appreciate that, and I want to pass that thanks on to you and to the members of the committee.
They were, the savings to the town is over $56,000.
Yep,
So it's incredibly helpful.
absolutely. Do you want to have us entertain a motion to accept these changes?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we have to do it today?
Yes.
Okay.
I will get the sheet before we leave, and so you can review it, and before signing it, I'll get it from
Okay.
Heather.
Yeah,
Heather can tell me.
if we haven't seen the sheet yet,
And the
I hear
issue
you.
is it's an April 1 deadline. That's why the committee
All right.
was working.
Tonight's the night.
That's why they had 4 meetings in 2 weeks.
oh, no, I
Yeah, no, it's
understand
not
that,
having
I
seen
just,
it, and that's my bad, I apologize. I'll get Heather to
I
email
would
it.
also, in general, feel more comfortable being able to look it over before we vote. That being said, given the circumstances.
so, okay, I'll make a motion, we accept it contingent upon our review after this meeting and signing it? Can I motion that?
That sounds very.
I love that.
reasonable.
Second.
All right, we have a motion made and seconded to approve this contingent on our perusing of it later on, and our signing of it at that time will be our acknowledgement and confirmation.
Beautiful.
All right.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, I just,
Yeah.
No,
Second.
no.
All right, we have a motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Aye, 3-0. And thank you again, Ben. We really appreciate everything. All right. Next up is review the MIA plan agreement with IAC recommendation.
That's the sheet of paper we will see contingent upon. but
Gotcha.
it's Safely locked up in Heather's office.
That's the same thing, so never mind then. Tells you how much I knew about what that was. All right, next up is we have Jim here today to talk about the recreation program review, baseball being added, and the funding of our fields. Thank you very much for coming, Jim.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Ben. Have a good one.
thanks, man.
Which one's the least hot?
I don't know, I'd probably take the one where the young man was sitting, because it's probably nice and warm.
So, first of all, I would just like to thank you all for the support of the recreation programs that you've given over the years. We have some former coaches of some of our rec sports. Some of their children have come through the program and enjoyed all the various sports. There's been a good support from the town for what we've been doing, so I appreciate that. So I don't know where you want to start. I had given, I think Becky sent you some stuff. I have copies if you need it.
You might as well, those I hadn't sent. I didn't send that, so you might as well hand them out since you have them.
All right. So I'll start with field use, okay? So Becky had asked me to give her an idea of what was most needed this year.
Thank you.
Are you good?
Yeah. Do you need it?
No. I think I have one still there. May 5, I thought I counted right.
Yes.
So I can give you a real brief history. We were looking for field maintenance funds for several years, and the first time I believe that we got some was either 2017 or 2018. I don't remember exactly which year, which was $5,000. And I believe last year or the year before, it was increased to 6. Jeff and I had talked about the need to bump it up to 12,000 at some point. And so it got bumped up to 6,000, which is where we're at in the current year. The bottom line, I guess, is we started treatments at the elementary school, the area around the softball field and the soccer field 5 years ago. We've seen dramatic improvement in the turf by those treatments, and that's been a good thing. We got approval at town meeting in 2018 out of capital stabilization money, or whatever fund it is, for $12,000 to receive this soccer field. Subsequent to that, there have been a number of ups and downs and curves that prevented us from doing that project. One was that twice with park grant money, I was told that the $12,000 was being used as match to get, town match to get the park grant money. Then there was a question about could we irrigate the field? Since we already have an irrigation system at the baseball field, could we provide irrigation for a soccer field and just hook into that irrigation system? And the water district said no.
Was there a study or something done on that?
There was a study done, and we also voted, you also voted at town meeting, I believe in 2020, to do a couple of drillings to see. And,
Yeah.
and the result of that was there wasn't enough water pressure
Okay,
to provide the irrigation system that would be needed for the soccer field.
okay.
And then we had Park Grant Phase 3, which was supposed to be a kayak kiosk and rec shed, where the present rec shed is, that's, I can't open the door, that's how much it's sunk since last fall. So I got to work on that tomorrow. And the renovation of the bathrooms, and a new rec shed with the kayak kiosk. Subsequent to that, it was decided that the kayak kiosk should be where the baseball shed was, on this side of the batting cages, right as you come in from the parking lot, because it was closer to the thing. And in the process of that, baseball got a new shed. They weren't asking for it. And by the time we finished with the shed and the kayak kiosk and the bathroom renovations, which I believe ran over, Jeff was not sure if there was sufficient money left to do the rec shed. So that was sort of put on hold. But again, I was told that the $12,000 was being used as town match leverage to get the funds for the park. So this fall, I arranged with Frontier and my own scheduling of our soccer teams to be done by the first week in October, so the field would be free to be reseeded. And when we got the go-ahead to do that, the $12,000 doesn't exist. So the field basically is mud. It may not be safe to play on this fall. And it's a question of, since 2016 or so, when we first started asking about this, the time has taken its toll on the field. Part of the project was to redo the infield on the baseball field in the back, which we call Field 2, and to put in new turf on the infield there. And subsequently, that's no longer an issue. We use the backfield for practices, but not for games, and it's sufficiently flat and level, and can be used for that purpose, but does not necessarily need to have that aspect of it. So the original $12,000, excluding that, the price was $6,800, or to $7,000 last fall, and then of course the money didn't exist. So now that baseball is coming under rec, we have responsibility for some things at the baseball field. The baseball league stopped doing treatments on their field 2 years ago, which means that's no longer getting the treatments it needs to weed and feed the outfield and the area, infield and the area around the baseball field. And we need to start those up again. And the information I had given Becky is, this is the long sheet. This is what the annual cost would be if we did everything that we wanted to do, which comes out to be actually more like $14,000. But there's been some things in here that we can talk about. Currently, we receive no money from Frontier for the use of this field. They also, the middle school soccer team practices and plays on the field at the elementary school. Their JV boys and girls play their games, home games on this field. And usually one team practices there, but they did not this fall. And Ultimate Frisbee from Frontier is now at the elementary school this spring. They provide us with new nets for the big soccer goals out here every 2 years, new corner flags, and they actually provide the paint for the painting of the big soccer field. So it's not a lot of money, but it's a little bit of money. They also pay for 1 month in the fall, and I'm going to hit him up for a month in the spring now that Ultimate is at the elementary school for the porta potty, which is, I don't know yet. They haven't gotten back to me. I ordered it to be delivered tomorrow, but it is $180 a month. I'm anticipating it might be $190 this year. Okay. We usually do April, May, and June. We pay for one. The Franklin Soccer Travel Club pays for one, and Frontier pays for one. And in the fall, we do September and October only, because we basically don't have any rec there unless we have softball in the fall, and we haven't had that since before COVID. So the Franklin County Soccer Club also gives us a payment for one of the treatments at the school, which is $8,200 or $850. Sorry, and there's a typo on this. It's actually 4 treatments. I'm sorry. It's actually 5 treatments, not 4 treatments, at $850 a piece, which comes up to the $4,200. So we get some income. We also have gotten some income from the Valley Storm Travel softball team that occasionally has used Merritt Field and has given us a donation for the use of the field. So in some years we get donations of about $2,000. So my sort of proposal here is that maybe if we had $9,000, we could use the baseball money. We'll be getting some money from baseball that they've accumulated over the years. And if we utilize the income that I get currently, there's no way for me to put it in the field maintenance account. So it goes into the revolving account, and then I pay some of those things out of the rec revolving account. One of the things Becky and I had talked about is that if the field maintenance was a revolving account, that would be helpful because we could put money in, and if there was some money left, it could carry over. Mm-hmm. The other aspect of this, and there's a lot here, but we add a material called turfus to the infield at the softball field, and I hope to be able to do it at the baseball field every 2 years. That mixes in with the infield material, and it makes it more absorbent.
Yeah, I've seen that going
in. And then we also use Quick Dry, which is from the same company, and the Quick Dry and the turfus and the material, they all mix in to make the field more absorbent. So every 2 years we've been adding about 80 to 100 bags at the softball field. And that's about $1,000, or probably a little bit more now. I'm assuming the prices have gone up. It wouldn't be quite as much at the baseball field. It might be more like 50 or 60 bags because you've got the grass infield, whereas the softball field is all dirt material. So there's some expenses that would be every other year, and that would be really helpful if there was a revolving account, because that would be helpful. So I guess the bottom line is there might be a way for us to use the baseball money, use the income that I get, and if we had 9,000, not 12,000, maybe enough money to reseed the soccer field. And this is kind of preliminary, and it's not set in stone, but that's a possibility. And I know the budget's tight, and I know we're looking to find ways to balance it. So that's kind of, I guess, where we're at. But if you haven't taken a walk out to the soccer field, you should just take a quick walk someday, because it is weeds and mud. There's a little grass on some of the corners where they don't play as much. Other than that, it's basically gotten to the point where it has to be done.
Yep. Thank you very much. In terms of the revolving account, I think that's a pretty low-hanging fruit, easy one. As long as we have the ability to do so, I don't see any reason not to turn it into a revolving account if that makes your job easier.
There's already a recreation revolving account, but it has a lot of activity already with all the programs and fees going into it. So having a second one just for maintaining the fields would make sense.
What would we need to do in order to establish
I
that?
can just talk to the accountant.
Okay.
And we have to add it to, we'll have to do a special warrant article to get it added to the regular
Okay.
revolving fund warrant article. So it'll take a new warrant.
And we have time and everything to get that done between now and town
Yeah,
meeting?
I
Okay.
think we can get that added.
So yeah, if you don't mind, I'm assuming the board is on the same page on that?
Yeah.
Okay, that seems like an easy fix on that one.
Well, because I think that the best part of that is that when I get the money from Franklin, Soccer Club, or from Valley Storm, or from anybody else, then it can go right into the field maintenance, and that's where it is.
Yep.
I keep pretty good track of the stuff in the revolving account, but there is a lot that goes in and out of that account, and it is what it is.
Yep.
It's pretty amazing to watch.
So just a question for future, not this year, future. I know there's been, grants and money and stuff, that we definitely have to get back to the discussions and working on it. But like for things like pickleball courts and things like that, is there any type of restoration, anything like that that could be funded through grants, like in the future, that you're aware of?
Like restoration for
Of the fields.
fields or this or that. I don't, but we can look. I'm sure other towns have done that. There would just be, the one thing, over the years, I have suggested that Frontier should be paying us some money.
Yep,
Yes, now granted, they're giving us some in-kind, and they're now paying for the porta potty, hopefully 2 of them, 2 months, for the use of the fields. He also, the paint that he gives me, I also paint the field over there, so.
yeah,
There's no cost to the town in terms of that. And it's not insignificant. A case of paint is, $120 for 10 cans of paint. And I go through 4 cases on both fields in the fall. So it's, it's not like it's $100. It's
Yes.
$400 or $500 or $600.
yeah.
The nets go for $400 or $500. Corner flags are not that much, but so they do something. But Whately gets money for the use of Hurley, for the baseball field and for the soccer field, and now a softball field, because that's where the JV plays its home games. The middle school practices and plays their home games at the 90-foot baseball field there, and the varsity soccer teams play on the soccer field there. And I know that they get money, and I think it's somewhat substantial.
Yeah.
I'm certainly open to having that conversation with Frontier. It seems like it would make sense that we're treated equally among the other towns in the region. If that's what Whately's doing, I think it makes sense for us to also have that conversation with them. Procedurally, how would that happen? Would we just go to them and say, we want to charge you to money?
Well, I could set up a meeting. Well, I can feel them out. I can call and find out and make sure, verify that they are paying other towns and how much.
So, and again, it's, right, you have the ability to talk to other town administrators.
Yeah,
They must know what is getting paid at Hurley Park. And again, not that we have to match it dollar for dollar, we don't.
It's
But-
based on use, it would be based on use,
But,
yeah.
right, just have that discussion, if and again, I'm sure it's plenty of money, you know, there's a substantial, but you know, if we find out that they're getting $12 for use of Hurley Park, it's not worth, you know,
Yeah.
extending that conversation. If we find out that they're, you know, getting 12,000, it's a different conversation, and I'm not saying those are any valid dollar amounts, but there's a big difference between $12 and $12,000. So, yeah, I would start there, you know, and see what maybe Whately can shed some light on.
But not just Whately, like, it'd be good to get an idea of what Deerfield and
Right,
Conway have
And
going
again,
on also.
it might only be, or it might be as simple as calling Darius and asking him.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
And, you know, he could tell you, and, you know, obviously it's a little too late for them to adjust their budget and put money in their budget for payment of a field this year. But, you know,
Yeah, so I think that there's two things here. One is what we're doing this year, and the other is what can we do for the future to set you up
right.
for better success in the future. I think there's a couple places that we can look. You had mentioned the capital budget. We could, you know, we have a couple of things that in the capital budget that are like the paying off the trucks or police cruisers that are every couple of years that need to come in, that are regularly scheduled things. We could include in the capital budget a regular $10,000 a year line item for field maintenance, for example, that kind of thing. So it's just there, and I know that we have in the past and that money disappeared, but we
but
have.
if he gets his own revolving account,
Exactly.
it can't disappear.
Yeah.
Well, and then there's two other things, and I know you've got a lot to do. The first is, we need a new rec shed.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've got cross-country skis and snowshoes stored downstairs that we're going to go into the shed so that we can offer that in the winter if we ever get enough snow, because 3 years in a row now we haven't. But we've done cross-country skiing days at the school in the past when the skis were at the school, but they cleaned out stuff and made us take them back here. The soccer, so I have soccer goals and t-ball equipment and other equipment. Some of that t-ball equipment is going to go into the baseball shed because that'll just be all a part of baseball now. But we still need an upgrade of that shed. It is falling into the ground.
I mean, couldn't we do a CPA? And we talked about CPA money for that, or?
So that was going to be my next question. No, if I find that you asked that, is any of this stuff that can fall under CPA?
Well, not this year.
No, again, I know not this year. We're talking about for future years. So, and then maybe we don't necessarily need to hash that out today, but let's on our radar for next year's budget. Look at CPA, look at capital planning, possibly look at grants or whatnot, and also talk to Darius and the other towns about potentially collecting from Frontier. But back to this year's budget. What I'm hearing from you is 6,000 was the last year's numbers, 12,000 is what you asked for this year. But you're saying if we came in more around 9, you could probably make that work.
I think so. I mean, I'm thinking we would take I don't know what I said here, $2,400 of baseball money. Baseball, I don't know how much they're gonna have in their account, but they have a few $1,000s that's gonna be coming basically to us. It should go toward baseball.
Yep.
But that would be going toward the baseball field and its expenses. And then if I took the income that I normally get, which is about $2,000, and use that money, that gives us $4,400 on, and then if I had used part of the 9,000, we probably could get soccer field received.
Okay.
It would take a stretch, but I think we could probably do it.
Because that was the number we were throwing around last time we were talking about this, is that I'm not sure that we can fiscally this year go from 6 to 12, but we can probably go from 6 to 9 and be able to hit the 9 mark, with the understanding that we know that we're falling short of what you're asking for and what you need, and hopefully move that mark up in subsequent years, either directly or, as we're saying, potentially through other funding like CPA or capital planning. Which brings us back around to the maintenance shed. Is the maintenance shed completely separate from these numbers?
It's on this page here.
Okay, but that wouldn't be, the $9,000 wouldn't touch the maintenance shed at all. Maintenance shed is
No,
still
no.
sitting there as
Yeah.
a thing.
And he's looking for a significant building that would be, it's not one of those $2,000 shed at Home
We're
Depot.
probably talking about 16 by 18,
Yeah.
maybe a prefab from Skips or one of those places that can be delivered. We'd have to think about what it was going to go on, whether it would be a concrete pouring, pad, or whether it could go on blocks and be, as long as it's done well. So I don't, Mike, I forget what I put in here. I think
15
we're
to
talking-
20.
Seems like
you know,
a
we're
good
talking-
CPA item.
We're talking a fair amount of money, but it's needed.
Yeah,
So one of the questions I have on that is, I know that the Franklin Tech
well, that's what I was
crew,
gonna say.
they build small sheddy kind of buildings as part of their thing.
Supposedly, they were going to build one 5 years ago, but that never happened.
Was there a design?
Well, John Carey lives in town, and was the vice principal, I don't know if he still is, and his kids came through the rec programs, and he was talking with them about doing that, and I thought something was going to be proposed and go forward, but it never did.
Yeah, because that's what I was thinking. Is this something the tech school could take on as a project?
And maybe the town still has to pay materials and stuff, whatnot, but if we could get them to build it for no labor costs, and that, 15,000 turns into 8 of materials, that might be much more doable.
We'd need a couple hundred for pizzas.
Yes, absolutely.
Bottled water, soda.
Pizzas,
yeah.
bottled
But
waters, yeah,
Again,
But just that might be a way to be able to take that dollar amount down a little bit. I think either way, we don't have money in the capital budget for this year, nor a request for this, and we don't have money in our budget to be able to come up with 15,000, so I don't think, just vehicle-wise, we have a means of making that happen right now. That being said, if we make this this is either going to be on a capital request for 2027, or we have a deal worked out between now and then with Franklin Tech and make it a warrant article or something like that. The question comes sort of back to, what do you need to get you through from now until when the ground is broken on that kind of a project?
Well, we'll manage.
Yeah.
I basically have moved most everything out of there, other than soccer goals and t-ball equipment. But when we have soccer season, soccer balls and bags of soccer balls and that kind of stuff is in there. First aid kits are in there, different kinds of stuff that I take out over the winter, and it gets put back in. Now, some of that for t-ball is going to all get put in the baseball shed, so that'll change that a little bit. We'll muddle through, but it is something that we need to get addressed.
No, absolutely.
It was supposed to have happened, and there was never any sense of how much money was left, if anything, in the park grant, and so it didn't get done.
Yep.
Was there a CPA match for the park grant? Was there a CPA match for the park grant when they got that? Was it? So that's the only time there's been rec
I don't
money?
know. Well, I don't know what the matches were. I was
Yeah.
told 12,000 for reseeding the soccer
Yeah.
field was being used as match.
Okay,
And what else was being used, I don't know.
okay. I'm just,
And I guess do we want to talk about field use?
So the last thing, in what we would like to make more formal is to really look at fees that are generated. There are some opportunities to use vendors that want to use the property, but I think the vendors that want to use the property want to make their money on the property and leave, so there's no benefit to the town, except for the experience in the program. So we're trying to figure out how to keep the town facilities to use for town programs and then charge fees where possible for those programs.
If they're making it part of the use, it makes sense for
And
them
I
to be
just
part
happen to
of
have a
the.
handout.
Come prepared, we
I
appreciate
think
it.
Jim has thought about this
handout-
for a
before.
long time.
This handout was first prepared and presented to the select board in 2016.
16. Field usage request form.
And, it's a lot to look over right now, but just, again, we have had some usage. I had a field hockey group that used the backfield in the spring 2 years ago, and we had them I had them fill out this form. I got an insurance certificate from them showing that they had coverage, naming the town as second, as additionally insured.
Yep.
and we agreed to a fee, and they were here on 10 Wednesdays in the spring, I think 3 years ago, right, kind of after COVID. During COVID, we actually had Candace Yoga did some outdoor yoga on the property. And again, we had her fill out a form, and she gave us a fee. And yes, she was collecting fees and running her, in a sense, her business, but she was paying fees. We've had a few other people that have asked and have in fact done some things on our property without fees.
And
Should I bring this up or what?
not this one.
Okay. But the other side to that is we do have in the fall, in the late summer and fall, Mel will be getting requests for groups canoeing down the river to camp on our property. We've never charged them. We've never asked for insurance certificates. And they come through, they camp overnight. By and large, it hasn't been an issue. They have no open fires. They don't leave trash, you know. But
And they're formal groups,
but
they're
they have
not,
formal groups.
Okay.
This is aimed at formal groups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically.
I
If it's
just,
a formal, organized group, whether it's a business or whether it's a group,
it's
should
some,
we not be doing this? And just, there's a difference in the use of fields between the school and here
yeah,
as well. Because the school fields are, Ben has to give the approval for.
yeah, I used to coach one of the Frontier, the soccer leagues, and we used to send him insurance forms and stuff, but we didn't pay a
Usually
fee.
I'm included in that decision.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he collects insurance certificates or not.
Well, we used to submit one, but I'm not, I don't know what's happening now.
I know, I don't either.
right, so there's like groups, like a bicycling group or something does a overnight here, so,
Yeah, we had them through 2 or 3 times
Yeah.
in the past.
so,
And they brought in porta potties and all, you know, all kinds of stuff. And they left a little trash, but it wasn't bad. But I don't think they paid.
okay, so that's really what we're looking for, is to maybe formalize some type of
Right.
payment for that, so that it does cover the time and,
And insurance.
And what I did,
And insurance.
I took this from South Hadley Recreation, Deerfield Recreation, some of their ideas, put this together. I have updated it a little bit over the years, because I did submit
Yeah.
this almost 10 years ago the first time. So, but I think there needs to be some sort of a more formal policy.
Yeah.
And if calls come in to the administrative assistant, how are they handled? In the
Yeah.
past, Cindy basically handled them. And she would notify me, she'd notify the fire department and the police department, are there any problems with this? You know, that all happened, but these groups never paid. And
So-
they're businesses.
again, I'm just shooting from the hip here, because this is the first time I've heard it, but could we handle this something similar like we do with a one-day liquor license? Could we call it like a one-night camping license or something like that, and put a set fee around it that we need police department, fire department, rec director sign-offs in order, you know,
To make sure they all know and are aware, yeah.
yeah, and then, you know, an insurance certificate, and again, I'm not saying exactly like a liquor license, but a liquor license has a fee associated with it, and it has a formalized procedure for how that's granted and how that's run, and it has a dollar amount assigned to it.
Yes.
And the fees that I put in here basically are more toward youth groups,
Yeah.
sport groups, et cetera, so we might have to flesh that out a little bit more. But
Right.
again, that would be money that could go into the field maintenance fund or even a maintenance fund. We now have new bathrooms that need to be maintained. You know, we have hot water heater and hot water in those bathrooms now. It's like, we've never had that before. You know, and so it needs more care than what it was getting in the past. And again, baseball always paid free for the bathrooms. And that's not happening at this point, so.
So I didn't want to bombard you, but I wanted you aware that he's been thinking about this for
Yeah.
a long time, and it's a really important idea, and
No, it
formalizing it and getting into a policy. I just want to be sure.
No, and the fee usage
support.
also helps to drive the rest of it, the collecting of the insurance information and whatnot, and it sort of just is like a one, it's a thing that makes it all kind of
Just have it
pull
go
together,
forward, yeah.
so, you know.
Right.
It's like, did they pay? They did? Okay, that must mean they've also done all the
Right,
rest of
and
the
then
stuff,
we
you know.
just like add on to this an overnight camping fee or something
Yeah.
like that, you
Yeah,
know.
an overnight fee, yeah. I mean, absolutely, I think that's a great idea.
I mean, the fee schedule looks very reasonable. It doesn't look overly punitive or anything like that. $25 for a half day, $50 for a full day seems very reasonable. And the season fee for teams, $150 for a team of 15 players, again, very reasonable. So, yeah, no, I've got no problem.
Well, like the Franklin Soccer Club has 4 teams that use the field there, and what they give us is actually more than what 4 teams would be, a little bit more. But that's a negotiation that we've worked out over the years. And it started out, they got the paint and painted the lines on the field, and they bought new nets every couple of years for the soccer balls. And now we've gotten to the point where they're paying for one of the treatments and 2 months of the porta potty because they're the main users of it.
Yeah.
That's great.
So, yeah, I think it sounds like we're all in favor of formalizing the fee schedule. So please work together to figure out the nitty gritty of that, and then we'll approve it.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. We appreciate everything you do.
Oh, your hat went that way, though.
I know. I can't leave without my hat. And again, I thank you for your support over all the years of the rec programs.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Jim.
Have a good one, Jim.
Take care, Jim.
Alrighty, next up on our agenda, we have the police chief's contract. I see we got Eric here today. Thank you very much for coming, Eric.
And I think the contract piece will not, we'll move on to the second
Yep.
item. The chief is here to talk about the change from part-time to full-time and how that actually worked out, and he had a great suggestion
Suggestions are always good.
today.
So it is the hope that we'll be able to increase the staff like we've been able to do 2 or 3 years ago. And that was the first time we were able to do that since 2001. Given the financial constraints that the town has coming into next year, and the fact that we really wouldn't be able to publicize it or post it to July 1st anyways, we're not able to fill it July 1st. So why not take from the beginning of the year, say 12 weeks, and remove that from the budget, and then that will reduce, I think it's $12,566.40 or something like that.
So in effect, we'd be budgeting only for part of a year for full-time officers, if it's only part of a year.
So we budget for 9 months. Now, the caveat to that is the following year, you have to budget for a
Right.
full year. But I think that would be a huge step to go forward and try to get a seventh full-timer, giving us regularity around the schedule, giving us more officer coverage to handle all the things that we're already doing, to include the new mental health program that we started a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, off the JDP grant. And knowing that the part-time ability is just not there anymore. No part-time academy.
Yeah.
There was hope to try to start one in Greenfield, but the Municipal Police Training Committee has kind of put a hold on any new academies going forward. So that may not get off the ground in the next 6 months or even longer. So the idea would be, okay, well, the existing part-timers that we have, and we've been losing some because they've been picked up by other bigger towns, and there's no more part-time academy to pick from, we have to make a decision. Are we going to look at putting on full-time officers and just weeding out the part-time contingent as we go? We're still actively looking for part-time officers. We just can't send them to an academy because the only academy right now is Worcester, and it's about a lengthy time. So if you work full-time and you wanted to be a part-time cop, you would go to this academy 2 or 3 times a week for the next 10, 11 months. And once you're done, you could do work part-time. Like I said, we've been losing part-timers to full-time departments, Greenfield, Wilbraham, Berniston, Northfield. So it's great that they're picking from what we have, but we kind of want to keep them. But with the small amount of part-timers that we have now, I don't see maybe one might be interested in going full-time, but the rest enjoy what they do. They're not gonna leave their full-time job, they're not gonna leave, they're not gonna do that, so. As a department, as a town, as a community, we have to decide, do we want to have as many officers as possible responding to calls during the peak times, during 24/7, or do we want to look at the schedule and say, okay, some of the towns around us don't do 24 hours, is that something else we want? I like to think that a lot of us, from you all included to other residents I've spoken to, is they enjoy knowing that when they go to bed at night, they can call somebody, or they wake up, or if there's an accident, someone's going to be there. You're not waiting 30, 40, 50 minutes for state police, and nothing against, no bad remarks about state, we're great with them. It's just a matter of what do we want as a community. So that's why I proposed it again this year. Looking at the budget, we took some of the part-time monies out, so it was only a $15,000 increase between the two. So if we start this position later, now that position, is an increase is only about $3,000. If there's a way to fine-tune that even more, I'll be more than happy to sit down with Becky and the finance committee and do that.
So at the end of the day, hiring this full-time officer, a new full-time officer, is not giving us more coverage. It's maintaining.
Yep.
It's maintaining the
So
numbers that we have.
you're not going from, I'm using fictitious numbers again, from 2 people working per shift to 5 people working per shift. You're still keeping that same number of officers on per shift, and you're using this full-time one to fill in the gaps that so this full-time guy, again, making it up, but say his schedule now is gonna be 11 to 7, 5 days a week. So now you won't need part-time officers 11 to 7, 5 days a week.
So the concept with the budget was the part-timers are historically scheduled for 18 hours a week. That's their
Yeah.
budget. And then the rest of it is for holidays and benefit time. So
Yeah.
if someone takes a sick day, personal day, vacation day, whatever. We haven't been able to do that. And a lot
Yeah.
of that's been very tight. So the idea would be is to manufacture a schedule where we would have those open 18 hours now increased to, instead of 9 and 9, it would be 10 and 10, because the full-timers do 4 10-hour shifts. So those two would be covered by the full-timer. And then the other parts of that shift could theoretically be a second officer on, say, a Monday day shift and a Friday day shift. Because the peak of the calls that we have are historically during the day shift.
But that would typically be being filled by a part-timer.
No, we've been running them bare bones. So we've been running them, like say today, I was the only officer on Friday.
But you want to run them, you just can't find the part-timers to fill those positions.
We've had to cut the budget, so we don't
Okay,
have,
gotcha.
the part-timers that we have now can barely cover what we have open just for them. Forget about covering the extra spots that we want to cover. We've gone along and had one officer per shift for a long time.
Yep.
And with the new addition that we had, we're able to maximize the amount of officers and put coverage on the peak times. So make sure we have daytime, evening time definitely covered. We have a midnight officer that works the second half of the week, and the new officer we just hired works a split shift where he works as evening and then 3 overnights. So we can try to give the town that 24-hour coverage. As we're going towards July, if we were to keep it maintained coverage, we're gonna run at least 2 shifts a week, if not more, open. No one's gonna be on. And that's usually during the daytime. So we can try to move it off of midnights and try to go to day shift, but now we have no one on midnights. So we have to decide how do we wanna go forward with this. Do we wanna try to provide coverage to give during the peak times, or do we wanna just say, no, we're not gonna bother with that, make the schedule work as best you can, and if you have holes, you have holes. And I like to think that if we can give the officers the ability to have coverage around the clock, give it to the community, give it to the officers, there's gonna be some overlap on like the evening and the midnights have an overlap, part of the day shift, the evening shift has an overlap. But the peak time of the calls that we have are historically Monday through Friday. I'm not discounting what happens on the weekend because we're very busy on the weekends. So this coverage would enable us to get rid of the part-time that's already being squeezed way too much, that we're gonna eventually be losing, most likely another part-timer in the next couple of months, and then we're left with another 2 or 3 that do not want to do more than they're already doing. So what do we want to do as a community? Do we want to still heavily rely on part-timers when there's no more part-timers to rely on? Or are we going to manufacture the schedule in a way where we may have to give up midnight shifts to give us the coverage on the day shifts and the evening shifts?
I mean, fundamentally what it is at one point we had a large enough pool of part-timers to be able to both cover regular shifts and also cover the someone's out sick, someone's on vacation, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we're at a position where we only have enough part-time hours to cover half of that. And I would rather see the part-time hours covering Brenda's out sick or on vacation, because then, you know, that's the cracks in the pavement that we're trying to fill. Using up those precious part-time hours that we don't have a lot of to cover normal shifts hurts our ability to be able to do that kind of coverage.
100%.
If you had 24-hour coverage full-time, what would you need in additional?
Well, in a perfect world, 24-hour coverage would be 9 full-time officers, at least counting me. But 9 full-time would give you the ability to have coverage across the board 24/7 and give you potentially more than one officer on each shift. In the town I used to work for, there were 10 of us, me plus 9. So they were on a rotating schedule. So on paper, there was 3, and 3, but the way the schedules went, there was 2 officers per shift per day.
And right now, what do we have?
And here, we have 6 full-time. So we historically usually run 1 officer per shift. There is overlap on the evening shift after 9 o'clock, and there's overlap on the beginning of the evening shift from 4 to 6 p.m. on some days, 4 to 5 on the days I'm there. And then the 2 busiest days that we have for calls, we have 1 officer part of their shift and another officer does a split, and that's on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So there's 2 officers on those shifts, and then also me. So the way it goes now, that's how we have the best coverage which we can get. If we weren't going to fund a 7th officer, shift schedules are due for May 1st. So we present it to the union. This is what the schedule is going to be come July 1. So we have to manufacture a schedule that you would have coverage as best as you can 7 days a week. And just know that there may be an overlap on, say, Wednesday on both the day shift and the evening shift. Or we forego the midnight shift on half the week or whatnot.
Okay.
So there's a mixture of what we have to decide what we want to do. What do we want to do as a community? What do we want as residents? And what do we want as town officials?
So I certainly don't want to speak for the whole board, but I think that from my perspective, I see the value and the wisdom in shifting part-time hours to full-time hours, given the pool of part-time officers and what's going on with that in the state. The question, at least for us, was always, you know, it was an increase in money that the town is tight on. But what I'm hearing from you is if we make it a 9-month position for this year, we're coming in $3,000-ish over somewhere very reasonably.
I came up with a total of $50,672 between what was freed up from both accounts.
Okay.
And I think a new officer is about 54.
And you're referring to doing the budget normally,
Yes.
or with a 7 full-timer, and that's the difference?
Yes.
Because a lot of that difference also attributes to the contract.
Yeah. No, yes, I'm talking about in terms of part-time going down by this much, full-time going up by this much. The difference between those two was somewhere in the $15,000-ish range.
Yeah, so the 2 budgets I submitted, one was to do business as normal,
Yeah.
or one with a 7 full-timer. And to do that with the 7 full-timer, we drastically cut the part-time budget, like I said. the
By
18,000.
38,000, I think.
Yeah, and
or
then, so
40.
that was a difference of 15,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So what I'm hearing
Now we're
is that,
looking at a difference
so
of
3-ish.
less than 5.
yeah.
Right.
And the only concern, of course, is we have to fund it next year and every year after that, which means that, and like everything else in town, once you approve something, it's substantially harder to draw it back. And not saying necessarily that we would want to roll that back, but just that is the concern, is that next year is going to be 12 months, not 9 months.
So again, I think you always have that option of if by some miracle, Greenfield does get a part-time academy in the future, you have the option of, through attrition, the next person that leaves, you're not gonna replace them as a full-time. Now we, once again, have a pool of part-time officers, and you can move in that direction if that's what,
Yeah.
you know, if circumstances allow for that to happen in the future. The chances of it is probably slim to, but again, you have that option of, through attrition,
Yeah.
not, you know, making a change, then, so.
And, you know, let's look at the grand scheme of things. There's a good chance that a decent amount of the full-timers could be retiring in the next 3 to 5 years.
Correct.
You've got 2 officers that have been on since the early 90s, another officer that's been on for over 15, 16 years here, myself, you know, I'm getting old. So at some point, you're gonna have a younger group of people coming up through the
Right.
ranks. And if you have an existing department that is able to then see what this town has done and then move forward, you might be able to pick from within, or, you know, decide, okay, we're gonna go a different route with this and change
Right.
the way that policing is done. But there's a lot of things that a lot of people have seen in the past that they enjoy having somebody who's monotonously driving through town and knowing, okay, this car is always here, this is always there, that's always there. And again, nothing against part-timers. I started as a part-time many years ago. You're working 1 shift a week, 1 shift a month. You're not gonna remember those things, you're not gonna know those things. So when you start enjoying having somebody on full-time that is dealing with the calls, dealing with the public, knows somebody because they've dealt with it consistently, they've responded to calls, they read the logs every day, so they're up to snuff on what's been happening. It's a little bit easier than trying to be educated really quick in 10 minutes
Yeah.
before a call.
Well, I mean, and not to be fortuitous about it, but we were having a conversation with Officer Peters this the beginning of the meeting about his relationship with Crystal's son, and that like regular, I'm in the store every week, every day of the week kind of a thing. There is obviously value to that as well.
Huge amount, yeah.
So procedurally, this is not a decision that we'd be making today anyways, and it's a decision that we'd have to talk to the finance committee next
Yeah.
week about at our next meeting. That being said, thank you very much for bringing this in and for giving us some wiggle room there with the $12,000 in the end of the month.
And again, the other option that we have to decide is if we don't find a candidate that has an academy, and we want to send someone to the academy, you know, that's going to be a question that we have to sit down as a town and sit down with the union and figure out what we have to go forward with on next steps on how we can hire somebody.
Mhm.
In a perfect world, we would hire somebody already with an academy.
Yep.
That would be perfect. And there may be candidates out there that have that ability. Or if there's candidates who are part of the older part-timer group, and I don't mean by age older, I just mean since the last 4 years, they went to the Bridge Academy, are we able to then put them on as a full-time officer until they're technically certified through the MPTC and post? That's always something that we could do as well. And then the great thing about that is we no longer have to wait the 6 months while they're in the academy.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you very much, Eric. And we will be discussing this at length next Monday.
While I have you. So I let Becky know that our animal control officer has officially resigned. She's no longer with the department. So we're not asking for any changes to the budget, but we have to sit down and actually look at what do we want to do for the ACO position. So I've been looking for the past couple of months on what it costs for a regional service. So a lot of you may remember that the Franklin County Sheriff has a dog shelter, has a regional animal control. They have drafted up a potential contract for us to utilize if we're willing to look into it. This would be for the remainder of this year until June. There is a cost. It's $2,300 and change. Our budget for the animal control is just over $5,100, and that is almost all spent by now. To do Franklin County Animal Control for the year would be, I would assume, they quoted me on $8,900, but that was for this fiscal year, so I'm sure that's going to go up for next fiscal year. So, as a board, do you want to try to look into the regional services, or do you want to see if we are able to offer this position back out to the public, or Before that, to in-house employees, maybe there's candidates who currently work for the town that are interested in the animal control position. You know, the perk side, you get to deal with fluffy animals, sometimes stinky ones, sometimes good ones. You do it for
Sometimes
the
a
love of the
skunk.
animal, not, yeah, the skunk. You don't do it for the praise, but you do it for the love of the animal. You get the joy of having a department cell phone or a laptop and answering all the state regulations.
Boy, you're selling that.
Wonder is open.
When you're holding that puppy and he's just looking at you, I mean,
But-
that's just.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Of course, that's what you do.
From my perspective, having an in-house person is cheaper, from what it sounds like, at least currently. Whether we can find somebody else to do the same hours for the same price or not is a whole other conversation, but if we were to replace the person for the same contract the old person was on, it'd be substantially cheaper by about $3,000 a year to have that. And we have somebody, a personal, person in town as opposed to being part of a larger region. And going back to the conversation we had with the state police is, if there is a problem, we want somebody coming from Greenfield or wherever, or would it be, do we as a town appreciate having somebody who's, in town and that's their job? So I guess I'm failing to see a lot of upside to going with the regional one, other than that we know we can do it and we might not be able to find somebody to take the position.
So I do actually have a question about doing the regional one. Would having a regional animal control officer put a strain on your department if it, by means of, right now, if there's a barking dog complaint, for example, I'm sure we probably don't get them in town, but if there was one, that comes into you or into your department, they go over, assess the situation, is there a barking dog or not? That would now add another layer to it, right? Now, after your department assessed that, then they would have to notify this outside contractor, whatever.
So officers generally respond to noise complaints.
Yes,
So they would still deal with the noise complaint.
right,
When it gets down to the animal itself, whether it be animal abuse or
Yeah.
just simple
Yeah.
noise complaint for a dog barking, we would, as we have in the past, and if this was regional, we would work with either person, whether it's an individual employee or regional service, we would work with them. So we would still handle the noise complaint.
Right.
It would just be, hey, notify them during this. If it's during normal business hours and they have somebody else, like right now, this group also handles some of the towns around us, so they may have a patrol car in the area that would respond. They're usually in a marked sheriff's cruiser with a uniform, and they respond. We utilize their services for a lot of things, so this would just be one more thing for us to hold
Okay.
on to. It wouldn't put any extra restraints on us.
okay. I just wasn't sure, right now, with that all being in-house, it's leaning over, hey, we had a barking dog there, versus, I don't know what type of formality
Yeah.
there is.
Well, so, 8.5 years ago when I started, I was here for almost 10 months before I found out that the animal officer was actually under my control. I had always assumed it was under the Board of Health because that's where it was in my last town. So he eventually went through, 'cause there's a lot of certifications you have to do.
Yeah.
So he eventually went through and got all the certifications, but then he retired, and then we ended up hiring somebody else. That person worked for a few years and then took a leave of absence, but now is gone. So,
Yeah.
there's still regulations that the ACO has to deal with to be
Yeah.
certified to be in that position. We also, I think it's $100 for like barn inspection. We also have it listed as an animal inspector. So locally, we also have that person do that as well. I don't believe any of the regional services, and I've reached out to some of the ones around us, from Hadley to Deerfield, Greenfield, and then the sheriff, Montague, all those areas. This is the only one that's gotten back to me. So, I mean, who knows? I could finally get an answer back from the other two, and they could be substantially less. And then I'll bring that to the board, and we can make a decision. But if we were able to hire somebody on the existing budget that we have, $500 of that, or a little bit more than that, goes to the dog shelter, because that's where we would bring dogs
Yeah.
if we couldn't find out who owned them.
But they wanted to raise that to 3,000 this year and backed off when everybody got hysterical. So
Yes.
they're,
It hadn't been updated in 13 years, So they increased it, and every town said, I don't think so. But the sheriff came back and said, okay, let's revisit this, and they only went up by a certain amount. But that's to say that in the coming years, that's gonna go up. Not 3,000 in 1 year, but it's gonna go up. So we use the sheriff's dog shelter, which is a great resource to have. Everyone that volunteers for them and everyone that runs in that shelter is, their heart is in the right place, and you need people like that when you're dealing with animals. So we already work with them, we just work with them in a different capacity. So, you know, if we were to go with, say, an employee that's interested in doing it, then we would be able to utilize them. The problem is people go to sleep, so they have full-time jobs, so there's times
Right.
where you may not be able to get them, whereas the regional service, you would have for a good portion of the day. So it's an option of what you want,
Yeah.
what you want to do.
Is there a good knowledge, with that organization, is there a good knowledge base and just people who generally work together and do all that
Oh, 100%.
kind of stuff?
Yeah,
Can-
100%. I go to the annual meetings, I've worked with a lot of them in the last 8.5 years that I've been here. I know a lot of my officers have worked with them. In fact, they've even stepped up and helped us, guide us on a few things since the ACO stepped down to a leave of absence in that couple of months. So they've worked with us, they've bent over backwards to work with us, so I'm very happy to deal with them. And they understand budget constraints, so they know that if we don't go with this, it doesn't mean we don't want them ever. We don't ever want to,
Yeah.
a system, we don't support them. They just know that we're budget, conscious
And what towns utilize that service?
a lot.
Well,
I don't have all of
local?
them, but it's most of Franklin County.
Okay.
I think Levitt and Wendell just signed on. I don't think Shutesbury does them. I don't think so. I think it's
Shutesbury
Pelham.
might be talking
Um,
to him soon.
So there's a lot of agencies that will look. I mean, like I said, this fiscal year it would have been about 8,900 and change, so I'm assuming that's gonna go up
Gonna go
for
up.
next year. Our budget for the animal control, like I said, is just over 5,100, and that's to include $500 that went to the dog shelter, so that way we could, if we picked up a dog, so the ACO bought a new chip reader, we went and bought a new chip reader, so if the ACO wasn't available, we at least had it. We've used it a couple times to figure out who the dogs belong to, which is great. Otherwise, we would have to drive the dog to Montague, drop it off there, and then have the person reach out and say, hey, I can't find my dog. Is it this guy? He's a picture, that's him, he's in Montague.
So what happens if you don't get the position filled?
I weep at night? No,
No,
we need,
Well, no, I know that, but I'm just saying,
if we get
so
someone who
your
doesn't,
animal control officer just left, right? Is actually is currently gone?
yeah,
So now, as of today, you don't have an animal control officer.
yeah.
Going through the advertising, the interviews, whatever you have to go,
July 1st.
that's how long it'll probably take?
I mean, we could try, I mean, I would love to push it sooner, but I'm not gonna stick that on anyone here, because we have budgets, we have things to get done. If we can
Right.
streamline and get it done faster, great, but if we're looking for a July 1st start date, if we have a current employee that is interested, and I don't mean police, I mean town employee.
Yeah.
That's interested, they would have to begin the process of getting the certifications through the state before they can take the reins, if you will,
Yeah.
and go forward, so.
And how much did you say the regional thing's gonna charge us for the rest of this year?
For the rest of this year,
I think it said 23.
2,300.
2,300.
Okay.
I give you-
So I kind of feel like
Eh,
I don't want to not have a dog control. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't think there's been a dog officer since I got here.
She's been on personal leave in October,
Okay,
end of
Yeah.
October, early November.
And because she hadn't resigned, they couldn't do anything about it.
right.
So they've been handling this for a little while.
So I guess the question is, do we handle it for a while longer, or do we sign up for the regional thing, even if it's to get, as a stopgap measure to get us through, and then we find our own person, or we decide we like the regional thing, or?
Well, I don't think you can go to the regional thing until you've pulled go to the regional thing now, you got a contract, right?
But we could
But
just
it's
sign
only
for the rest
for-
of this year.
Just till June 30th.
Oh, yeah, just through June 30th. But
Right.
it's the $2,300, $2,400.
$2,233. and we don't have that.
Right.
Right, but I would think you have to advertise in town first, see if somebody's interested before you go and sign a contract.
Well, I mean, if we're maintaining it as a position, if we're deciding to eliminate the position and regionalize with this service
Yeah.
and basically outsource a service to the Franklin County Sheriff,
Or
we're
just
not,
buy
it's not like we're choosing one contract over a bunch of them. We're not filling that position.
Or just buying a little time until we
Yeah.
decide.
So I don't think we would have to, if we make the decision to forego the internal person and go with the regional thing, I don't think we'd have to offer any position because we're making a choice not to have that position anymore.
But then what do we do for July?
Which is, the question of do we continue having it at $9,000 or maybe 10 next year or whatever, or do we try to refill the position at
Advertise now.
5,100 or 6,000 or something like that for the following year.
Has anybody expressed interest that you know?
Not to me. There's been rumors that there may be an employee that works for the town that might be interested. But I don't have that person's number to reach out to them. And I just came back from vacation, so.
Sure.
I can definitely, I don't want to go and ask them because I don't want to make it sound like I'm gearing it towards one person.
Yeah.
I think that if we're going to, we've already dealt with it for the past few months, if we want to go ahead and advertise it out in-house to local town employees that say anyone's interested in a patrol position, the budget is currently this, of that, it pays for expenses, you get a department cell phone, and, and you get, I think it's $100 a week, is what their agreement was, so it's $100 a week, and then whatever costs above that is paid by the town. But, a lot of their stuff, they work in partnership with the police department, dispatch. Like I said, we give them a department cell phone, so that way they can be reached, so they can call residents, they can do follow-ups and all that stuff, so. We're at a spot now where, given there's gonna be a little bit of an increase for the dog shelter, I think we're just gonna absorb that into this coming contract and not ask for more, but the following year, we're gonna have to ask for a little bit more, because that dog shelter cost will go up.
And how much did you ask for this budget for that position?
So she wasn't around to ask for anything, so I'm assuming they kept it.
Yeah, I think
straight
you had
line.
it level.
So the only addition we made to this budget was the previous year, and it went
Mhm.
from 4,100 to 5,100.
Okay.
So, because we saw that the ACO was handling a lot of calls.
And that's just sort of my question more for Becky than for you is, one way or the other, we need to make sure we have money for the next fiscal year of this service, whether it's for the person or whether it's for the task force. If that's the case, do we need to increase this line item to be
Yeah.
$9,000? Because we can always hire somebody for less than that and not spend it, but we kind of need to make sure we have enough to be able to cover a year worth of that. Yeah.
There is 5230.
It's 5,230? Okay.
Yeah.
That's
And that
expanded.
doesn't give you $100 a week with the 500, because this pays for the 500.
I'm sorry, $100 a payroll. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be $100 a payroll.
Oh, you
$200
just
a
cut
month.
their salary
Yeah.
in half.
I'm sorry, yeah. Sorry.
Okay, now I can make
Okay.
that work.
So it's $2,600-ish for the salary,
Just the salary.
and then expenses and cell phone and all that stuff, and then the 500 for the.
500 plus for
Okay.
the dog shelter, and then I think there was an agreed upon rate many years ago of like $17.50 per hour if they went above and beyond.
Okay.
So if there's other calls, sometimes that
There
would
is.
come up. But historically, it's $100 every payroll, I'm sorry, not every week, every payroll. So that is, $2,600 just for being on call.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and you're saying that most of the $5,200 for this fiscal year has already been spent. There's some money, but not a lot left in there, not
We had a
$2,200.
situation where one of the dogs in town had to be removed, and we had to pay for the sheltering costs,
Mhm.
and that's where that money went.
Okay, gotcha. So if we were to say, from now till July 1st, you guys are on your own, unfortunately. Can we roll whatever little money is left over in that account into our budget considerations for next year, and then bring that number up to $9,000-ish, so that we have the money to be able to be part of that program if that's the way we go. Because then either way, if we are able to refill the position in-house, great, maybe we save some money in town, and that's fine. But if we either are unable to find someone to fill the position, or otherwise the board decides between now and July 1st that the direction we want to go in is that regionalized service, we have the money available and it's there. Does that make sense to the board and to Becky?
The number, so you'd like this budget to be at 9,000 for FY '26?
He's saying 98 or 8,900 is the quote for this year. I don't know exactly how much, but it's going to be not less than that.
Yeah, so for this fiscal year, it would have been 89.34, which is averaging $745 per month, and that was the rate. So I'm assuming that will go up come FY '26. So if we figure that to be, let's say, 9,100, you'd have to add an additional 600 for the dog shelter, that would now bring it to 97. So it's substantially more
Yeah.
what we have budgeted.
Could you ask them, in reference to the quote they just gave you, what
next
FY
year?
'26 would be?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, if you
Because I'd
get
hate to put in 91 and it's 95 and,
Yeah, no, I can definitely ask.
Okay.
that'd be great, thank you.
And we can have a discussion with the finance committee next week about the specifics of this, but just, I think that it doesn't make, it makes sense to over budget for that and cover our bases than to put $5,100 in again and have a special town meeting in the middle of the year for $3,000. Does not make sense to me. So, okay. Okay, that makes sense. Any other questions from the board on that one?
So I'll let them know that we're gonna hold off on this for now till July.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have the money for it, and I don't know that we're gonna be able to.
Yeah,
come up
and,
with it.
and just say, we're interested in exploring our options come July 1st. What are we looking at for a price
Yeah.
then?
Most definitely.
And just to confirm, we would still need to maintain the $500 for the shelter
At
as
least
well.
500.
Okay.
I'm assuming that went up.
I'm thinking she might go up to 1,000.
You think it might go up to 1,000?
And there's no consideration with the deal with the Franklin County, with the Franklin Sheriff, to be able to bring dogs to them directly? Is it just because it sounds like in our old scenario, we were paying for the service plus we're paying for dropping off the dogs. The new one, we're paying for more of a package deal.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is the ACO services, not for the dog shelter.
Okay.
So even though they fall under the top umbrella, they're two separate budgets.
Okay. And there's no discount for
So there's plenty of towns in Franklin County who asked that specific question, and they said, no, nice try.
Okay.
It's not the case.
Had to ask.
Oh, yeah.
Had to ask. Okay. All right. We will certainly mull over that and figure out where we want to go July 1st and on. But yeah, I think unless the board feels differently, I think we can't really do anything for the rest of this year. We don't really have the ability to do so. All right.
All right,
Thank you very much, Eric. I appreciate it. I'm good. Anything from?
Thank you so much.
Welcome back. Hope you had a great vacation.
Had a great time.
We'll talk to you soon.
Good night, Eric.
Good night. Alrighty, next item is buyback retirement of 2 staff members, request to use free cash. And this is the elementary school teachers retiring warrant articles that had been mentioned in the past. Discussion around this, is this just,
I just wanted to put it out there because we were talking a lot about free cash, and this is another $60,000 of free cash that is referenced in the SES budget a couple of different times. So I just wanted to bring that
no,
back
that's a
to
good
our
point.
memory because it impacts our overall reserve funds.
Darn.
So we're gonna be another 60,000
Lower on the free cash, yeah.
on the free cash.
Or 30,000 lower on free cash and 30,000 more out of general stabilization or something like that. But
Right, but,
overall, 60 less, yeah.
Morgan, did we freeze? Is the video dead?
No.
Okay,
No,
that
that's-
one is.
That one's frozen.
Okay, sorry. It should be-
Alrighty, that's horrible news. I knew that was there, I had forgotten about it, so yeah, thank you about that. Which I guess, so the last 2 items are the buyback retirement and then also the budget stuff, which is all kind of part of the same discussion, so we'll roll
Yeah.
together. So if I'm hearing you correctly, going to our budget documents here, the current difference you have here is 365, 5-ish difference, plus 60, plus the money we need to put into capital stabilization.
Yes.
Okay. And we decided the capital stabilization is like 180 or something like that we're going to put in?
183, I think.
183.
183.
So 183, 60, so 243, plus 3.
250, 300 for the budget, because it's the 50 plus the 250.
Okay. So we're looking at 200,000 plus out of each account. Okay.
This doesn't have.
Let me do a quick little map here. So,
Oh, and I did, the free cash is with the budget file. I'm sorry, I didn't print it out separately. Yeah, I'm afraid I didn't print it, but it's online, for your review.
It's online in the,
You should have the Excel file for
But-
the budget.
it's not in today's folder, it's in the,
I think I put it in today's and the budget folder, so 331.
so it's not in today's. There's no Excel file in today's. I guess it was a statement, not a question, I'm sorry. Would it possibly be in the budget material folder?
Yes. I've been,
if I can take a second while you're looking for that to confirm, 365 is the general budget shortfall, 60,000 is the sick buyback, and 183 is the capital shortfall.
correct.
Okay, all of that together is almost exactly $600,000. It's 600,000 or it's $1,300 short of $600,000. So we're looking at 300,000 in general stabilization and 300,000 in free cash, which is what we had kind of already talked about, and is effectively half of each of those numbers, because we have just shy of 600 in general and just around 600 in free cash.
And that's without any take back of the capital stabilization items that
Yep.
I think, I just got a lead on the biggest one, the 4,500. I think I found it.
Okay.
I'm just, it might be available, I'm not positive. I think it was, in 2020, it was $50,000 on the capital stabilization for, the complete streets engineering. But I haven't I don't know what project. Every project seems to have a different engineering firm that I've been looking at, so, but there's hope. I hope to resolve that one soon, because that's the biggest one. Other than that, I know we have about $40,000 available to bring that down even further.
And obviously, we can discuss this in more depth next week with the finance committee, but I would be, where I'd like to see us be is 300,000 from free cash, period. And then however much we can take that 300,000 of general stabilization and shrink it down by crawling back some money from capital and whatever else we end up doing in the next couple of weeks. If we can bring that 300 from general down to 275 or 250, that would be ideal. But
Right, but then this still needs a few more tweaks to it, so that number's gonna change if we're gonna put in there the money for recreation, if we're gonna put in the potential
Yeah.
cost of the regional animal control.
now, this number here, the 365, does that include 6,000 for Jim? Or
It's only 6.
only 6? So we'd be looking at 3 more for Jim.
Yep.
And we'd be looking for another 5-ish for the
AOC.
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 I'm sorry, that
Animal
animal
control
control.
officer.
ACO.
Library, what do we do with that? We're going.
I spoke with Catherine today, and Catherine officially withdrew their request for the 7,400. They're going to use the grant money this year, and it'll be a pilot program, and if it works out, then they'll ask for money next year.
Yeah, which is what we had discussed last time. Yeah.
Good.
Okay. So the library's staying the same. The police budget is going to come down to a $3,000 increase from the level services to the new budget.
And that's in there now.
It is in there,
I
okay.
subtracted out the 12,500.
Right, but,
that's
so then
part
that
of-
just needs,
That's
whatever
nice
he
one.
comes in with the number for
This is the-
the regional animal control.
So we're looking at probably about another 8 on top of this-ish.
eh,
But potentially 40, maybe $50,000 coming off from the capital side. Not out of the budget, obviously, but out of the calculation for the free cash and for general stabilization. So we could be looking at somewhere closer to 550 instead of 600 from out of those two accounts. when all of them is
I think,
implemented.
yeah, because we're adding back about 12, and
And what's in here for the medical, is that the,
that's the 10.82.
The
So that's
revised number we got tonight.
With what Ben Peters was talking
Yeah.
about.
okay. So
And
there's nothing more coming out there.
We're pretty close to being, this is our budget with a couple of things tweaked, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here is the plan that I need to print out. I apologize again, I didn't get that printed out ahead of the meeting. I thought it.
All right, any other questions from the board at this time on the budget, or are we ready for next week?
I think we're ready.
I don't hear any other questions or anything on that. Where did I put my agenda? There somewhere. Here we go. All right, that's the end of our new business today.
May I interject?
No.
New business?
Yeah.
Right, we had spoken Thursday about possibly adding KSC to the agenda for new business today.
Yes.
May I take a few moments?
Yes.
I'm not on the agenda, is that all right?
I sent you all
You did.
materials.
Yes.
Do we want to do it during new business, or do we want to go to public comment for that?
Oh, you? Yeah.
Just in terms of procedure?
I think new business.
Okay, that's fine. Please.
Super. My name's Keith Kittrell. I'm with KSC Incorporated, and the good news is I'm not asking for any money today. I run a small research and development firm down on Amherst Road, across from the Police Academy. And we have
Across from where?
across from the old Tennyson Academy in front of
Oh,
the apartments.
yeah,
across from
yeah.
the Shell 665 Amherst Road. We've been there for about 40 years. We're a small research firm, and we're zoned for research and development and light manufacturing. We're working primarily in the area of chemical manufacture for bio-based plastic development. We've been, the last 6 or 7 years, we've also been partnering with the IELTS Center at UMass, their incubation center, helping startups that go into their small labs-based program that are trying to grow their business. We've absorbed them into our facilities at the KSC property. We have extra wet lab space that they've been using and been able to grow their startups from what I might call bench scale operation to pilot scale operation, and moved on and out into other parts of the state to grow their businesses. We have an opportunity to apply in the next couple of weeks with the Massachusetts Technology Collaborative for what's called a Massachusetts Tech Hub. That is an opportunity for us to just continue our existing relationships with the University of Massachusetts, select or partner with other startups that are trying to grow their business, help them in the forms of space to grow their business, some mentorship activities, involvement in the community, and help to grow business and in the town and in the area. And it's also designed to help us scale our existing business into our own pilot plant development for commercial activity. All we need for this opportunity, for this application, is the town's support. I've created a sample or a draft letter of support just for your consideration. But it simply suggests that the town of Sunderland is excited about new growth activity in the area, bringing innovative new technologies to the area, and want to support KSC's application designation as a tech hub. I compare it, for example, to the recent, a couple of years back, the tech hub is out in Pittsfield. Forgive me the name escapes me off the top of my head. But it's similar to that, where we just have a reputation for growing new businesses in the area and helping businesses grow. Currently, our current tenant is called Florent. They've added 10 or 12 new engineering jobs in the last 12 months in the area. They also have a manufacturing facility that they're growing out in Deerfield, which again just helps to attract business and vitality in the area. Our synergies with the university are not only very close, we've got a lot of good relationships there that we've built over the course of decades that continue to attract talent to the area. So for consideration, we're seeking a letter of support from the town to include with our application in the Massachusetts Technology Collaborative. The only caveat is that we're a little bit time strung. We have the April 16th deadline, and so if you would consider it, you'll get a request for a quick turnaround. Any questions I can answer?
My big question is, what does it mean? What does the classification mean? Sounds like there's a grant involved, so that would be monetary support for you. Beyond the monetary component, what else does that entail? Is it?
Sure. It's growth opportunity for our company and for those startups that would be in the future affiliated with our company. Those funds would be used for staffing for our business, for capital layout. We'd also improve our space, improved what I call shared lab space that the university might more readily, or anybody, I say the university because that's where existing relationships are, but shared lab space that they can come in and kind of step into and grow their business from bench scale, wherever the next step in the scale is. It also would include some funds for internships, which we've participated in over the last decades. Also, historically, we've invited high schools and elementary school students to tour to try to generate interest in STEM fields. So that's what the monies would be used for in the next couple of years. The grant that we're applying for is $5 million over a 3-year term. It's in coordination with an existing grant that's under negotiation with the Department of Energy for $2.5 million, again, for the same purpose, to scale our business and to improve our facilities for future business.
Great.
How many people do you currently employ?
We currently employ 5, and once this new award is in place with the Department of Energy, it's another 4 or 5 engineers. And on the flip side of our property, which is where our other tenant, they currently have 10 or 12 engineering positions in that space as well. Florent is the name of their business.
Right, but it's on,
So 665, so the driveway where the apartments, the new apartment, I say new, they're several
Yeah.
years old now.
Yeah.
That driveway is, our side of this KSC's fronts on 116, their side stems off that driveway.
oh, okay, I thought when you said across from the old tennis academy, I was thinking the other side of the road,
No,
and I'm like,
across the driveway.
yeah, no, I'm thinking there's a pond
Yeah.
there, and I'm like, I could not picture, so you're right behind the bus stop.
That's right.
Got it.
Bus stop.
I just couldn't picture where you could even fit 5 people on the other side of the road near that pond.
Do you have any questions, Dan? Or?
No, I think it sounds great.
I mean, I'm prepared to vote support this. I had an opportunity. Thank you for forwarding the materials. I had an opportunity to peruse those earlier, and it all looks
Okay.
good on my end.
Very good.
Motion to support?
Second,
All right, we have a motion made and seconded to write a letter of support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 3-0. We will do so.
Thank you for your consideration.
And thank you very much. We really appreciate everything you're doing for STEM Field.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Now that's the end of our new business. For old business, select board updates, I don't have anything for this week. Crystal?
I have South County EMS on Thursday. Hopefully nothing happens and we can actually have it.
Wonderful.
It just seems like so much weather or
Maybe
whatever lately.
move, I think, personnel board for the COG this week, but nothing to report, go back.
Wonderful. Any town administrator updates?
Yes.
Alrighty.
Today I interviewed with Beanie. Her real name is Katrin Pierce is her last name. There's a middle name, but she is interviewing for a Board of Health 5-hour-a-week position. She's very excited about it, and she was recommended by Gina, one of our Board of Health agents. She worked with Gina early in her career, and since that time, she left Montague as their town clerk. Well, she actually hasn't left yet. She's using up all her sick and vacation time instead of having it paid out. And So she's going to be available on the 16th of April. And I will bring her name back for consideration for appointment at the next meeting. And the Board of Health is very happy.
Wonderful. No, it's great to get that position filled, and it sounds like a great candidate, so.
Yep.
Wonderful. Any questions on that from the board? Beautiful. Thank you very much for taking care of that. Let us know how
One
it
thing
goes.
off that checklist.
Yes.
I
Very
know.
long list.
Yes,
Any other town minister updates, or is that it for you?
that's it.
Alrighty, beautiful. The only thing we have in our correspondence is a letter from Mark Durso, the former head of the Sunderland Youth Baseball, informing the town, this is something we got sent to us back in February, I want to say, informing the town that the Citizen Baseball League is no longer going to be maintaining the fields and running the baseball program as we've discussed multiple times over the last couple months. So just letting everyone know that we did in fact get an official letter to that end from the baseball department and Mark. And just on that note, I wanted to say thank you again to Mark for all the hard work over the last bunch of years. I know how much work it takes putting into that, not just the day-to-day operations of running the program, but also the basketball tournament, the outreach stuff they do. Just there's a lot there. I know how long and hard he's been working at that, and we really appreciate it and completely understand coming to an end of that, and we acknowledge that. So thank you again, Mark, for all that, and thank you to Jim for taking it over. All right, that's it for correspondence. We don't have any public comment. I don't see anybody on the screen or the one that's working. Or in person. Definitely nobody over there has their hand up. All right, we don't have executive session today. At this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion we adjourn.
Second.
All right, with motion made and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.